Alright, I am back. We're ready to get started on video number 2 for the Phoebe Mini Backpack. So this video starts on step number 10. We already completed 1 through 9 in video 1, which was the entire front of the bag. Now we are going to work on the gusset, and then we'll put everything together. Not sure how far we'll go, so we'll see. I'll try to keep it to 1 hour again. So this is your 20-inch zipper. If you are using zipper tape like I am, you want to cut it to 21 inches total, and the zipper must be 1 1/4 inches wide. So make sure that you're not using a 1 inch wide all-purpose zipper. We want right now the, let's see, open end toward the left. So this is my open end here. It closes to the left, open end at the left. We want the exterior top gusset right side up, and then place the 20-inch zipper right side down on top of the gusset and pin the zipper to the bottom straight edge of the top gusset. Alright, now you will sew this together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So when you get a 20-inch zipper, if you're not sure about your zipper length, and you're using a regular size zipper, not zipper tape, or cutting a larger zipper down, it's the length of the teeth. So you want the teeth to actually measure 20 inches from one end to the other. And then you should have about 1/2 inch of zipper tape at the end of each of that, each end of the zipper teeth. So you have a total of 21 inches of length. Again, when you get to the zipper pull, move that out of the way. Alright, now this is the lining. We want to match the lining up, right sides together with the exterior. Both are the top zipper panels. And we are going to pin along the same edge that the zipper sewed. And so the zipper is sandwiched in between. Oh. Always gotta move the zipper pull out of the way. Okay, and then we want to sew on top of the same stitching from the last step. So this is also a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just directly over that stitching. sides. Step 12, we are going to press both gusset panels, both top gusset panels, away from the zipper, wrong sides together. So I'm going to go to my iron and press these both away from the zipper, like that, wrong sides together. Okay, I've pressed these wrong sides together. I am going to throw a couple clips on here, just along the edges. I'm not sewing this part yet. I just want to keep everything together. Sometimes when you're top stitching, the lining will get pulled closer to the zipper. And we don't want that to happen. Okay, so now we're going to top stitch this using a 1/8 inch seam allowance again. Just along the zipper. Now in this part, if you're using one color for the outside, but a different color would look better on the inside, you could change your bobbin thread only to a different color to match your lining. So, you know, if you're using a white on the outside, black on the inside, you might want a black bobbin and a white top thread. Alright, once that is top stitched full length, we are going to set this aside for a second and make our strap. Or I'm sorry, the handle. Put that there. Now I already went ahead and pressed the handle before the video, but what you do is fold it in half, wrong sides together lengthwise, and this is the 22-inch long piece. Once you've pressed that in half, open it back up and fold each of the long raw edges into the center and press that, and then fold along the original crease in the center and press that. So now all of the long raw edges are enclosed in the center. Okay, now we will fold the handle in half by bringing the two short ends together to find our center. And I will finger press. And if you mark on this, you want to make sure that you're doing it with something not permanent, because this will be visible on the... I lost my marking tool again. Okay. And I'm just going to mark all the way across the strap. Let me get a ruler. Okay. So from that center mark, you want to then measure 3 inches from the center. Let's see, we'll put it. Okay, this is 3 inches. And make a line all the way across. And 3 inches to the other side. Hopefully you can see these lines. They're not my head. Okay, and then you want to make 2 more lines, each of them 1/2 inch from the end of the 3 inch marks. So might be better to do this. And again, that's all the way across the fabric. This pencil that I'm using is a Dritz chalk pencil. It works like a mechanical pencil, but the lead is chalk. There's paint green and white leads that go in it. And then it has an eraser on the other end, so you can erase it when you're finished. Okay, so you should have right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines marked on here. And now we're going to top stitch a rectangle from the furthest to the left line, the line furthest to the left, all the way to the line furthest to the right and back. So I'm going to throw a couple clips just along the center to hold that in place. I will start at one end. And back stitch here. Just right along that line. Okay, turn and 1/8 of an inch. Top stitch along that portion until you get to the other line that's furthest away. So this box will be 7 inches long altogether. All right, once I get to that line, I will stitch across to the other long edge, and I'm hand cranking only so that I don't over stitch, go past the edge, and then I will stitch back to where I started. And then back stitch here, just a few stitches. All right, trim the threads. Okay, so right now we have this. We're going to slide 2 of our 3/4 inch D-rings onto the strap and into that center part where we stitch the box. And then I just put a couple clips on here to hold them in towards the center so they're not in my way later. All right, now here comes your top gusset. What we want to do here is fold the lining back out of the way. So the lining is pulled back underneath the zipper, and the interfacing on the exterior piece is exposed in the back, because we don't want to sew the strap through the lining. Okay, I just clip that in place. If you want to really make sure it doesn't get in the way, you can press that. Be careful if you press, not to press on the fusible fleece, because it will melt if you put it directly on your iron. All right, now this will be, I have to refer to the instructions. You want to measure 1 1/4 inches from the raw edge. And we're going to draw a line. On the exterior. Sorry, I'm looking at the directions as I do this. And this time I decided to make the videos prior to releasing the pattern. So last time I made the videos after and then added them back in, and I found a couple errors, so I thought this would be another good check for me before I release the pattern. Okay, so I've marked that line. one long folded edge of the handle, matching up with the 1.25 inch mark. Match both short ends up with the short raw ends. Okay, and we want to put it on the zipper side of that mark. So it's near the zipper. If I know some people prefer to use 1 inch hardware and have 1 inch straps, and if you do, that's fine. But you'll want to make sure that you line it up so that it's about 1/8 of an inch back from the top stitching here. So you won't measure 1.25 inches if you use 1 inch straps. All right, I'm going to get some pins. And you'll just pin this, matching it up with that line. And you'll pin all the way to where that stitching starts. So the first short line that you stitched. All right, and then the same thing on the other side. And this will not lay flat in the center because that is your handle. So make sure you stayed on that line. Now we'll top stitch along this long edge until we get to that first short line of stitching. Stitch back across that short line and then back down the other side, and we'll do that on each end of the handle. Just as you go, make sure everything stays straight along that line and that you have your lining pulled back out of the way. You'll see I stop and readjust just to keep my strap from bubbling up or moving. I do that often. All right, now I stop exactly in that line of stitching. Turn and stitch directly along that line, stopping right at the end, turning back and stitching down this length using a 1/8 inch seam allowance, keeping my lining out of the way. We'll do the same thing with the other side of the handle. your pin, my pin was kind of pulling my fabric there, so I took it out. All right, I'm so excited because I love, 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 love this fabric. Okay, take these clips out. I'm going to erase that mark that I made at the center of the handle. That was really only there for placement, and it's going to be easier to erase it now. All right, now each of the D-rings, you want to pull it all the way down to the original line of stitching here, and you'll stitch across the other line that you drew 1/4 inch away, or I'm sorry, 1/2 inch away from where this stitching is. And that will secure your D-ring in place. Just make sure it's straight with that line and that your lining is still pulled out of the way. And this will hold the weight of the bag on it, so you'll want to stitch across and then back a couple times to really reinforce it well. And then do the same thing on the other side. And I wonder if my bobbin ran out because there's no thread. It did. Interesting timing. Normally it runs out in the middle of a top stitching or something. So here's my preparedness is that I have another bobbin ready. I'm so proud of myself. All right, and we'll top stitch along that short line as well. Still making sure that your lining is pulled out of the way. And just back stitch, stitch again, back stitch. We just want to really make sure that's secured well. All right, and then trim those threads. If your lines are visible at all, at this point you'll want to erase them, or if you used water soluble, you know, however you remove your lines. Go ahead and remove that at this point. And then you can put your lining back in place. Let's see. So now we are going to, isn't that pretty? I really love this fabric. All right, sorry, admiring my work. Now you'll want to take the exterior bottom gusset. Oh, I'm finding a few errors here. All right, we're gonna line that up with the end of your top gusset, or exterior sides together. Make sure that the lining is pulled under completely in place. And go ahead and clip that. Okay, and you will sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Again, these zippers that I'm using are nylon zippers that look like metal, so you can sew right over them easily with no problems. If you're using a metal zipper, just kind of hand crank as you go over the zipper teeth so that you don't break your needle. All right, now from the lining side, we will place the lining bottom panel right sides together with the lining and clip that in place, and then we're going to flip this over and sew directly over this line of stitching. My iron hat, since we need it for the next one. Okay. Trim the threads. Okay, now we want to press this away, press the bottom gussets away from the top gussets. And I'm going to press that seam right here, and then we'll top stitch that. And this top stitch will be again 1/8 of an inch. And then we'll repeat that process to attach it to the other side. So I'm bringing the exterior around to match here and make sure this isn't twisted at all. Match that up with the exterior sides together. Pin it together. And then we'll sew that using 1/2 inch seam allowance again. And then on the lining side, make sure that's not twisted. And it kind of seems like it's not fitting right, but it is. The top gusset is just longer than the bottom gussets. So match that end up, pin in place, and then sew again directly over the stitching from the other side. Okay, and now fold that end of gussets away from the seam, wrong sides together. I'll press that. And then we'll top stitch that seam as well. And if you notice here, I chose just to use the same fabric for my exterior contrast as my lining. So that was 1 yard, and it was just shy. So I used a little bit of the other fabrics. I used one piece of this and a piece of what I used for the front pocket to make the slip pocket inside. So I like purple, and I wanted to have purple inside and on the outside. So all right, so now we have our gusset is a complete tube, and at this point we will, let's see, we will baste the raw open edges together. So in order to do that, I will clip everything so that nothing shifts as we're going and that things don't get kind of twisted. They'll get like a twist to them. So just pull it straight and clip it while it's straight. See, it will seem like your lining is longer, and it isn't. It's just because it's curved. And then on this side, I'll do one side at a time. All right, so just start sewing wherever and use a 1/8 inch seam allowance. See if I get going too fast and I don't have like a walking foot or anything on here. It can kind of, it will pull the top fabric, and that's why I lift my foot up often to readjust so that it isn't pulling my top fabric, stretching it, and then when you get done you'll have fabric left over. So that's one of my favorite things about this machine that took me a little while to get used to is the knee lift. And it's nice not to have to lift a lever up with your hand to lift the presser foot, which is one of my biggest challenges now when I go back to my domestic, which I actually have a knee lift for that too. I just never used it. But it's difficult for me to, let's hope I don't mess this up because I'm not going to pin it. But it's difficult for me to get back into the habit of using the regular presser foot with lifter lever. I don't know what you call that. Probably wouldn't have to adjust this so much if I did just go ahead and pin it together. Okay. So we made it all the way around. Now everything is basted together. Extra trim my threads there just so they're not poking out at the end. If anybody has some like really good little snips, I wonder what brand, because I would like some. Alright, now we need to find the top center and the bottom center of the gusset. And to do that, we'll bring the two side seams together. When those are matching, flatten this out. And the bottom center can be marked by that. I'm going to use my pen just within the seam allowance though. And I'm actually going to mark it on the lining side as well, just so that I have it whichever way I'm looking at it. And then again, bring the sides together, pinch the top, and the zipper itself, which I'll mark with the chalk pencil. Okay, kind of see where that is, and then I'll flatten it out to really mark it. Okay, so now, oh, we are going to attach it to the front of the bag. We're on step number 22. So we move along a little quicker, it seems, on video too. Let's see, we're at 37 minutes now, so I'd say we still can keep going for a little while. We want the gusset to be lining side out, and we're matching the side with the zipper on it, right sides together with the front. So front of the bag, exterior side matches to the right side of the raw edge of the zipper. Let's see, I can't see my center mark here anymore. Oh, probably because I didn't make one. So when you're marking your centers on the top panel, make sure that you mark it on the top and the bottom. Okay, so let's try that again. We'll match the center to the center mark on the zipper, which is right there. Why do I feel like we're forgetting? No, we're not. Okay. We are going to pin this all the way around. I'm matching now the bottom center mark to the bottom center mark on the gusset. Pin a few times along the bottom straight edge. Pin a few times along the top edge. And then just kind of go around the sides and the curves and match everything up. Ease it all together. Alright, this part here, unzip that pocket zipper slightly so that the zipper pull is out of the way. And this should fold back on itself, the top panel there, so that you can line it up with the edge of the zipper and the edge of that top panel evenly. I don't even know if that makes sense, but I think you'll see when you're making it. I'm putting all my clips on backwards from how I like them. Alright, and it seems like we have a little extra fabric, but we don't. You'll just ease it in around the curves. Just whatever you do, make sure that your center marks stay matched. going to, if you get down here and it seems like I have a little extra gusset left, so I'm going to readjust that and kind of move the extra gusset up. Let's see, and you want these to be the top of the bottom gusset where it meets up with the side of the side pocket piece there. It should be, the side pocket piece top should be about 1/2 inch higher than the bottom gusset top or side, or whichever you want to call that. Okay, so now that we have that all pinned, we are going to sew that together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then we'll check it from the exterior to make sure that we enclosed the seams on the side of the top panel. Is that what I call it? The front top panel. Okay, so just start wherever. I always try to start in usually like along a straight edge. So the bottom, maybe we'll start there. I think after I sew this, I'm going to take a quick break to get a drink. Alright, just make sure, there's my trusty little screwdriver that came with one of my sewing machines. And I just grab that all the time to help me hold things where I don't want my fingers, which is anywhere under that needle. And just take it slow around those corners. Now as you sew around the top panel, just make sure you're not sewing through any puckers. Just kind of work them out with your fingers as you go. What am I doing? Use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. do when you, if you kind of readjust things, just make sure you keep that top center matched up. All right, now I can feel here that I'm coming back around to where the zipper is. So with your needle down, unzip your zipper a little bit so that you can move the zipper pull out of the way. And then resume sewing at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you want to make sure when you sew across the part where it's the end of the front top panel that you're definitely using your 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that you're getting the full end of that top panel. It has a raw edge there, and you want to make sure that it's all enclosed in your seam allowance. But we'll check that after we sew this just to make sure, and if it's not, you can go back over that part. Alright, so right here on the front, see here where my top panel meets the zipper, the two zippers meet, you want to make sure that you have the whole raw edge there enclosed. So like I missed a tiny piece of it here, so I'm going to go back, and I'll actually go from this side. You can see where those two parts come together, and that's right where that end is. So I'm going to go back in and just increase my seam allowance slightly there to make sure that I enclose that full raw edge. Okay, let's see how that looks. See, there's no raw edge now. Same on this side. If there's raw edge sticking out, just go ahead, and from this side, you can see where it should meet. So I just start my stitching along the existing stitching there, and then take it in a little bit where the end of that panel is, and then bring it back out to the line of stitching so that everything looks smooth from the outside, and you don't have any raw edges showing. Still just a teensy bit. So just go back in again. And that's okay to do when you're sewing, if you're using piping or anything. Just if you have to go back and fix it now, that's better than leaving it. and, you know, not being pleased with your finished bag. All right, and that's much better. There's still a tiny bit though, and I don't want that showing. And here's the part where I'll go in and sew it with a whole like 1/2 inch seam allowance, just being ridiculous, and I'm mad at myself when I'm done. And I'm joking, I won't seriously do that. All right, that should have done it. If it didn't. All right, that's good. So now, let's see, we are on step number 23. So we need to do an interior zipper pocket. So right now you want the lining front panel. So you have a lining front panel and a lining main panel that both look exactly the same. The only difference being that one is a 1/4 inch bigger around. So do you see that? The lining front panel is the smaller one. This is what we want for this step. And then you want 2 of your lining zipper pockets. Let me press this one real quick. Okay. So on the wrong side of your lining zipper pocket, we are going to draw an 8 inch by 1/2 inch box that is centered and 1 inch down from the top 10 inch raw edge. So I'm going to finger press this in half to find my center. And then I want to draw an 8 inch box that's 1 inch down. So measuring 1 inch over, I'm going to line up the 4 with that center line. And then I will draw all the way from the beginning down to the 8 inch mark. And then 1/2 inch below that, we will draw another line. Okay, and there's our full box. And then draw 2 lines at the ends to close your box. So now we want to place this right sides together with our lining front panel centered. So again, I'm going to fold this and finger press to mark the center. And right side up. And we want this to be 2.5 inches up from the bottom edge. So 2.5 inches right there. And centered. All right, so now you will pin in place around that rectangle. And then we're going to actually sew directly over the rectangle. Okay, let's move that one out of the way. So sew directly along the rectangle using your shorter stitch length. So I have mine on 3. You get to that corner, pivot, If you don't stop exactly at the corner, you can adjust it. Sometimes it's only like half a stitch away, so just get it to where the needle's ready to go down into the fabric, and then slide your fabric back slightly to get it down right in the corner. Trim your threads. All right, and now in the middle of that rectangle, you want to draw some more lines. So you want to draw one line that is directly down the center, so it's going to be 1/4 inch from the bottom, and it stops 1/2 inch from each end, about. And then from that, you'll draw a line to each corner. All right, and now you want to be careful when you do this to not clip through any of the stitching. I typically use my rotary cutter for the center line, but just kind of fold it to get a little snip and then cut directly along that line. And to the corners. And do not cut through your stitching. Make sure you got as close as you could to the stitching in each of the corners. All right, now you will press this. What I like to do is first I'll push this that way and I'll press it. And then I'll pull the bottom part up and I'll press that flat, just that part of the seam. And then it is easier when you pull this through to the wrong side to press it flat. So then what you do is pull the whole pocket through that rectangle and press it flat to the back, wrong sides together. So I'm going to go to the iron, I'm going to press that, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm going to have to end this video soon, it's getting a little long. So, I pressed this to the wrong side, all the way around that box. Wrong sides are together. Now we want to put our zipper in. Here's what I like to do. You can pin it in place, you can tape it in place. I use an Elmer's washable spool glue stick and carefully right along the edge of the box put some glue. When it dries, it's clear and you don't see it, but I try to keep it so it will all be covered by the zipper. You can use double-sided tape for this, but I do find that sometimes it's too wide and the sticky will stick out and you don't want that. So I'm using a longer zipper like I always do. With the zipper pull situated inside the rectangle, kind of eyeball it so that it's centered as far as you can tell from the back. Flip it over and then make sure that the zipper is centered in that box. And then I just press it down and the glue will hold. Alright, and then you want to top stitch this. just kind of carefully. Like the glue will hold, but it's not super glue, so keep that in mind. That's going to hold long enough for you to like gently slide it over. So I always backstitch a couple stitches and then just stitch completely around the box to hold the zipper in place. And stitch right back to where you began and backstitch a couple stitches again. Alright, clip the threads. We're actually getting kind of close to being done, but I feel like we're still forever away. It's at that point. Alright, now I'm going to trim my zipper away. I don't like to use my good scissors to do that. And now take your other lining zipper panel and line it up right sides together with the one that's attached. And pin that in place. We will be sewing this together. I prefer to sew it from the other side, folding the main panel, or I'm sorry, the lining front panel out of the way. So I put my clips on that way. If you haven't watched my videos before, if you have, I mean, you probably already know that I like my clips always to be in the same direction, with the top up. That's totally not matched up. Your, oh, I cut, yeah, your lining zipper pockets should be the same size. Mine aren't because I did something wrong when I was cutting, which I knew I was doing wrong at the time, and I was like, oh, that won't matter. And then I forgot about it. So that will all get cut off in the seam allowance anyway. Just follow the directions better than I did. Okay. So we are going to sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to trim the seam allowance down at the end, and that's important so that the pocket doesn't get caught in the seam allowance when you're assembling the bag. So just sew all the way around this rectangle over the zipper. And you leave the pocket, or the bottom of the pocket stays open, because you will turn the bag right side out through that pocket. Okay, trim that seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch, and that will also make it easier. I'm totally cutting through my zippers. That will also make it easier to sew the bottom of the pocket closed when you have a smaller seam allowance. Otherwise, I mean, it's really enclosed inside the bag, so it doesn't matter if this is trimmed or not, but in this case it does matter. Okay. Now now that that zipper is fully installed, you would repeat this entire process, which I am not going to film, on the exterior main panel. So it's this main panel with the other two zipper panels, and you will install another zipper exactly the same. If you want to finish your bag using binding, you don't need to use that zipper. It's optional. So keep that in mind. I'm not going to film that. Okay, so we are on step number 28. Most important part of this whole step, open the zipper. Okay, is it open? Open. I like to keep the zipper pull a little bit towards the inside, just so that it's not accidentally caught in my seam allowance. Here I am going to find the centers of the lining front panel and mark them. And this part can seem confusing. You know, you might think that you want to attach this to the other side of the zipper or the gusset, and that is not correct. You are sewing this to the same side of the gusset that you already sewed the other panel to, and sandwiching this whole gusset will be squished down in between. So we are matching the center mark here up with this center mark here, and I'm clipping that. And then make sure as you go you'll move your zipper out of the way. I'm just going to clip a few times along the top portion of this. So in this you will do whether you use the binding method or not. Otherwise you would need binding in the front and the back, and honestly it would look weird with the zipper being right along the front panel rather than like gusset, two zipper panels or whatever. So match the bottom center up, and we're going to sew all of this from this top side over the existing stitching. So I like to orient my clips that way. And don't be afraid to just squish everything up. I hate those red clips. They're old. I need to just throw them away. Don't make sure that your zipper was open. Your lining pocket. That's so important. So here it's like I'm making a, what would I call this? Not really a sandwich. Like a pierogi. It's like a bag front pierogi. Why am I so weird? Or a ravioli. So if you need to readjust any parts, that's fine. Just make sure that you keep the centers clipped together properly. And I do find on this part it's easier to pin the centers and then pin around the bottom and then ease around the top curve. So it's easier to do it than it is to show it, because it's hard to make sure everything's within view of the camera all the time. Alright, so then the trickiest part of this is just as you sew, you want to sew over your existing stitching and make sure that you aren't getting any puckers in your exterior. If a couple got in the lining, I don't think that'd be a big deal. but just really be careful not to get that in the exterior. And that's also why it's so important to stitch this over the existing stitching rather than this way, where things could get off. So here, if you do this, then the outside of your bag will still look nice. So let's see, where do we want to start? We'll start at the bottom again. And one more time, make sure that you have that interior zipper pocket unzipped. Back stitch. All right, and then just really stitch over that existing stitching. Maybe this is a bag calzone. I can't think of any other enclosed foods really. A pita. If you're using a domestic sewing machine or whatever, it might be, it's easier to do this with a narrow foot or your zipper foot, would be my recommendation. If it feels like you have too much lining at one point, you can kind of just hang the lining off the edge as we did when we attached the front pocket, and then trim that lining away. You want to be careful that you're not sewing that interior zipper pocket in this seam. So fold it back out of the way, which I did not make sure I did over here. Oh, that's fine over there. But just stitch along the existing seam. This is like the big reveal. So it doesn't look like I have any puckers. Do you see how I sort of like I let the lining part hang off there? That won't affect anything. And I'm just going to trim that. As long as you keep the exterior at 1/4 inch, this really won't matter. But I'm just trimming. I'm not trimming the zipper. I'm not trimming my exterior. I'm only trimming the extra lining away. And you don't want to trim your other seam allowances because there is zipper in there, so you don't want to trim that. So now you will pull this right side out through the opening in the bottom of your pocket. You can unzip that zipper the rest of the way now. Oh, maybe I should save this part for the next video. The big reveal. No. The big reveal is at the end because we're going to use the same method to finish the bag, and then we don't have to use binding. So, I mean, who likes binding? Some people, right? I do not. I like the finish that it gives. I just don't like sewing it. So, I was brainstorming and thought, oh, this pocket method that I'm using would work just the same probably to finish the bag without binding. So I gave it a try and I did. Alright, it looks like a giant mess right now, huh? Got some strings to trim. And again, I love to I don't love trimming. I like to trim all this as I go so that I'm not dealing with it at the end. So push your corners out. Before you sew your pocket closed, make sure that everything looks good on the outside of your bag.